The only thing colder than the October wind rattling our kitchen windows was the space where Leah used to sleep next to me. At 2 a.m, I sat alone at our granite countertop, nursing a whiskey and watching the digital clock mock me with its relentless march toward another sleepless dawn. The front door clicked open with the careful precision of someone trying not to wake the dead, or the husband. "Jesus, Owen!" Leah jumped when she saw me, her designer heels clattering against the hardwood. "You scared me half to death." "Sorry." I didn't move from my stool, just swirled the amber liquid in my glass. "Late meeting?" She fumbled with her purse, avoiding my eyes. "You know how it is. The Peterson campaign won't run itself." Her voice carried that particular strain of someone who'd rehearsed this conversation in the car. "Right. The Peterson campaign." I took a slow sip. "Funny thing, I called your office around 9. Hannah said everyone left hours ago." Leah's face went through a fascinating series of micro-expressions: surprise, calculation, then practiced irritation. "Hannah doesn't know everything. Some of us stayed behind to brainstorm." "Must have been some brainstorm. Your phone went straight to voicemail all night." "The battery died." She was already moving toward the stairs, her escape route mapped and ready. "I'm exhausted, Owen. Can we not do this now?" "Do what?" I kept my voice level, conversational. "I'm just asking about your day." She paused at the bottom step, one manicured hand gripping the banister. In the dim light, I could see what looked like a bruise on her neck, too perfectly placed to be accidental. "Nice scarf," I said. "New?" Her hand flew to her throat. "What scarf?" "The invisible one you're wearing to cover that mark." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Leah's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago, sharp, defiant, beautiful in her anger. "You're being paranoid," she said finally, "and frankly, it's not attractive. Neither is lying to your husband." "I'm not—" She stopped, took a breath, recalibrated. "Look, I bumped into the cabinet at work. Hannah saw it happen. If you're so concerned, call her." "Maybe I will." Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or calculation. "You know what? Do whatever you want. I'm going to bed." She climbed the stairs with deliberate calm, each step a small act of defiance. I listened to her moving around our bedroom, the ensuite door closing, water running, the soft thud of clothes hitting the hamper. When the house finally settled into silence, I pulled out my phone and opened our shared photo storage. Leah had always been meticulous about backing up everything, a habit that served her well in advertising and, as I was beginning to suspect, might serve me even better. The recent photos were mostly work stuff, campaign materials, client dinners, office parties. But there, buried in a folder labeled Project Files, were images that made my whiskey taste like ash. Leah and a man I recognized as Greg Weston, the real estate developer who'd been sniffing around her agency for months. They weren't discussing business, not unless business involved his hand on her thigh in what was clearly a hotel bar. Not unless business involved her laughing at something he whispered in her ear while his fingers traced the same spot on her neck I'd noticed tonight. The timestamps went back 3 months. I scrolled through more photos, restaurant receipts charged to my credit card, hotel key cards, even a selfie of them in what was obviously a motel room. Leah's face glowed with a happiness I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. My hands were steady as I forwarded everything to my personal email, then deleted the evidence of my digital archaeology. 12 years of marriage, and my wife had documented her own betrayal with the same attention to detail she brought to her ad campaigns. I finished my whiskey and headed to the basement, to the workshop where I'd built most of our furniture by hand. The familiar smell of wood shavings and varnish usually calmed me, but tonight it felt like a museum of my own naivety. Every piece I'd crafted, the dining table where we'd hosted dinner parties, the bookshelf that held her marketing awards, the jewelry box where she kept the anniversary gifts I'd given her, All of it suddenly seemed like evidence of a life I'd been living alone. I pulled out my laptop and started making calls to people who owed me favors. 12 years in marketing consulting had taught me that information was currency, and I'd been a very good saver. By dawn, I had Greg Weston's home address, his business portfolio, his divorce records, and the phone number of his very angry ex-wife who was currently fighting him for custody of their twin daughters. I also had the number for Sam Morrison, an ex-cop turned private investigator who'd helped me with a few corporate espionage cases over the years. Owen Harper. Sam's gravelly voice answered on the second ring. Either someone's dead or someone's cheating. Which is it? The latter, and I need proof that'll hold up in court. Messy divorce? Not yet. But it's going to be. When Leah came down for coffee an hour later, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper like it was any other morning. She moved around me carefully, a dancer avoiding an obstacle. About last night, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I think we're both under a lot of stress. Probably. I turned a page. Greg Weston seems like a stressful client. She went very still, coffee mug halfway to her lips. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that real estate development is a high-pressure business, must be demanding, working so closely with him. We're not working that closely. No? I folded the paper and looked at her directly. That's good. I'd hate for things to get complicated. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to read my expression, to figure out exactly how much I knew. The old Owen would have made it easy for her, would have retreated into hurt silence or exploded into accusations that she could deflect and turn back on me. The new Owen just smiled and went back to his newspaper. I have to go, she said finally. Early meeting. Have a good day, honey. After she left, I called Sam back. How fast can you get me everything? Depends what you want to do with it. I want to destroy them both. Legally. Completely. And I want them to see it coming. Sam chuckled. Now we're talking my language. Sam Morrison looked exactly like Central Casting would order for an ex-cop private investigator. Graying hair, suspicious eyes, and the kind of face that had seen too much to be surprised by human stupidity. We met at Murphy's Diner, a place where the coffee was strong and the booths were positioned for private conversations. Your wife's not very careful, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the Formica table. 3 days of surveillance and I've got enough photos to wallpaper your lawyer's office. I opened the envelope. The images were crisp, professional, devastating. Leah and Greg entering the Riverside Motel. Leah and Greg having what was clearly an intimate lunch at a restaurant 40 miles outside town. Greg's hand on Leah's ass as they walked into his modernist glass house on Elm Street. She's using the company credit card for some of these lunches, Sam continued. That's embezzlement if her boss wants to press charges. Also, your joint checking account paid for the motel room last Tuesday. She used our money to cheat on me? Gets better. Greg Weston's got a gambling problem his ex-wife mentioned in their custody filings. He's been borrowing against his business to cover poker debts. Word is he's about 3 months from bankruptcy, but he's hiding it well. I studied a photo of Leah laughing at something Greg had said, her face radiant with the kind of joy I'd once thought was reserved for me. What about the ex-wife? Margaret Weston. Bitter doesn't begin to cover it. She's been trying to prove Greg's hiding assets so she can get full custody and a bigger settlement. Problem is, she can't afford the kind of forensic accountant who could crack his books. An idea began forming, cold and perfect. How much would that kind of investigation cost? 50, 60,000, maybe more. I smiled. That's interesting. Very interesting. Sam leaned back in his booth. You've got that look. What look? The look guys get right before they do something that'll either make them feel like $1 million or land them in jail. Which are you planning? The legal kind. That afternoon, I drove to my father's house in the old part of town. Dad had retired from his plumbing business 5 years ago, but he still kept his ear to the ground when it came to local gossip and politics. "You look like hell, son," he said, handing me a beer on his back porch. "Thanks. You always know what to say." "It's Leah, isn't it?" He settled into his favorite chair, the one with the perfect view of his neighbor's garden and the comings and goings on Maple Street. "I've been hearing things." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that make a father want to drive over to his daughter-in-law's office and have a conversation about respect." His voice carried the edge that had made teenage me think twice about breaking curfew. "Greg Weston's been bragging at the country club about his new creative consultant. Seems she's very hands-on with her consulting." "How long have people been talking?" "Month, maybe 2. I didn't want to say anything unless you brought it up first." I took a long pull of beer. "I'm bringing it up." "Good. What do you need?" That was Dad. No drama, no lectures, just straight to business. "I need to borrow some money. About 60,000. He didn't even blink. "For the lawyer?" "For something better than a lawyer." "How much better?" I told him about Margaret Weston, about Greg's hidden debts, about the forensic accountant who could unravel everything. Dad listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. "So, you're going to help the ex-wife destroy him financially, and that destroys Leah's meal ticket at the same time," he said when I finished. "That's the idea." "What about the money?" 60 grand's not pocket change, even for me." "I'll pay you back. With interest." He waved that away. "I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about you. This kind of revenge, it changes a man." "I'm already changed, Dad. The question is whether I'm going to be the kind of change that lies down and takes it, or the kind that fights back." He studied my face for a long moment. "Your mother always said you had more steel in you than people realized. Guess we're about to find out if she was right." The next morning, I called Margaret Weston. "Mrs. Weston, this is Owen Harper. I believe we have a mutual interest in seeing your ex-husband's finances examined more closely." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. "Who did you say this was?" "Owen Harper. My wife is Leah Harper. She works at the advertising agency that's been handling some of your ex-husband's marketing." Another pause. "I see. And why would you want to help me?" "Let's just say I've recently become very interested in ensuring that Greg Weston's business practices receive the scrutiny they deserve." "Mr. Harper, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, I should probably hang up now." "I'm not suggesting anything illegal, Mrs. Weston. I'm simply offering to fund a forensic accounting investigation into Mr. Weston's business practices. What that investigation finds is entirely up to the accountants." "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing. Consider it a public service." She laughed, short and sharp. "Right. A public service. And I suppose it has nothing to do with the fact that your wife has been sleeping with my ex-husband for the past 3 months. My turn to be silent. "Mr. Harper? Small town? Big gossip network? Did you really think nobody would notice?" "Mrs. Weston, are you interested in my offer or not?" "Oh, I'm interested. I'm very interested. When can we meet?" That evening, Leah came home later than usual, her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly mussed despite obvious attempts to fix it. "Good day at the office?" I asked from the couch, where I was watching the news. "Busy, very busy." She kicked off her heels and headed for the kitchen. "I might be working late again tomorrow. Big presentation for Greg, for Mr. Weston's company. That's dedication. It's my job, Owen." "Of course it is." She appeared in the doorway, glass of wine in hand. "You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "I don't know. Different. Like you're waiting for something." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman who'd made me laugh until my sides hurt during our first date at that terrible Italian restaurant downtown. But there was something else now, something guarded and calculating in her eyes. "Maybe I am waiting for something," I said. "For what?" "For you to remember that you're married." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know, Leah. I know about Greg. I know about the motels. I know about the lunches charged to our credit card. I know about all of it." The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the boards like blood, seeping into the cracks between the planks I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. "Owen, don't." I stood up, stepping carefully around the broken glass. "Don't insult both of us by lying anymore. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She stared at me, and I could see her mind racing, calculating odds and options. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me the truth." "The truth?" Her voice rose, taking on the sharp edge it got when she felt cornered. "You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Greg. Yes, it's been going on for months. And yes, it started because you've been so goddamn absent from this marriage that I felt like I was living with a roommate instead of a husband. So it's my fault, isn't it?" She was warming up now, finding her footing in familiar territory. "When's the last time you touched me, Owen? When's the last time you looked at me like you actually wanted me instead of just tolerating me? When's the last time you gave me a reason to?" The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. Leah's face went white, then red. "Fuck you," she whispered. "No, Leah. Fuck you, and fuck Greg Weston, and fuck this whole goddamn charade we've been calling a marriage." I walked past her toward the stairs, crunching broken glass under my feet. "Where are you going?" "To pack a bag. I'm staying at Dad's for a while." "Owen, wait. I'm done waiting." 2 weeks later, Leah called. "We need to talk," she said, without preamble. I was in Dad's kitchen, helping him fix a leaky faucet and pretending I didn't check my phone every 5 minutes for updates from Sam or Margaret Weston's forensic accountant. About what? About us. About our marriage. About what happens next. "I thought you'd already decided what happens next." A pause. "It's complicated, Owen." "No, it's really not. Look, can you just come to dinner Sunday? At my parents' house? We need to discuss things as a family." The Ashfords' idea of family dinner was a formal affair. Crystal glasses, cloth napkins, and enough passive-aggressive tension to power a small city. Leah's parents had never quite approved of their daughter marrying a plumber's son, even after I'd built a successful consulting business. I was still the boy from the wrong side of town who'd somehow tricked their precious daughter into settling. Why Sunday dinner, Leah? Why not just talk like adults? Because some decisions affect more than just us. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. What decisions? Sunday dinner, Owen. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. I arrived at the Ashford mansion at exactly 7, wearing the navy suit Leah had bought me for her company Christmas party last year. The irony wasn't lost on me. Leah answered the door in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked beautiful and untouchable, like a photograph of someone I used to know. "You came," she said. "You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would. I'm full of surprises lately." Her parents were waiting in the formal dining room, along with someone I hadn't expected to see, Greg Weston, looking perfectly at home at the head of their table. Owen. Richard Ashford stood and extended his hand with the hearty, false warmth he reserved for people he considered beneath him. "Good to see you, son." I shook his hand and nodded to Leah's mother. "Mrs. Ashford." "Owen." Patricia Ashford's smile was arctic. "Please, sit." The only empty chair was directly across from Greg, who watched me with the satisfied expression of a cat who'd cornered a mouse. "Greg was just telling us about his latest development project," Richard said as we settled around the table. "Fascinating stuff. The kind of vision this town needs." "Vision," I repeated. "That's one word for it." Greg's smile widened. "Owen, right? Leah's told me so much about you." "I'll bet she has." The first course arrived, some kind of soup that probably had a French name and tasted like expensive nothing. We ate in the kind of silence that felt like a held breath. "So," Patricia finally said, "Leah tells us you two are having some difficulties." "That's one way to put it." "Marriage is work," Richard added, cutting into his soup with surgical precision. "It requires commitment from both parties." "It does," I agreed, looking directly at Greg, "especially when there are outside pressures." Greg's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. "Outside pressures can be challenging, but they can also reveal character." "They certainly can." Leah cleared her throat. "Actually, that's what we wanted to discuss. Owen, we've been thinking about the future, and there are some practical considerations we need to address." "Such as?" She exchanged a glance with her parents. "Well, Danny's starting graduate school next year." Danny was Leah's younger brother, a perpetual student who'd been finding himself for the better part of a decade. Good for Danny. "Graduate school is expensive," Patricia said, "especially the program he's been accepted to." "How expensive?" $60,000, Richard said, "per year, for 2 years." I set down my spoon. "That's a lot of money." "It is," Leah said, her voice taking on the reasonable tone she used with difficult clients. "But it's an investment in his future, in our family's future." "And you want me to pay for it?" "We want you to consider it," Patricia said, as a gesture of good faith. "Good faith in what?" Leah leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that might have been desperation or calculation. "In our marriage, Owen. In making this work." I looked around the table, at Leah's parents nodding encouragingly, at Greg watching with barely concealed amusement, at my wife treating our marriage like a business negotiation. "Let me understand this correctly," I said slowly. "You want me to pay for your brother's graduate school as proof that I'm committed to our marriage? The marriage you've been cheating on for 3 months." The silence was deafening. "Owen," Leah started. "No, let me finish. You want me to write a check for $120,000 to show good faith while you've been fucking Greg Weston in motels and charging the rooms to our joint credit card?" Patricia gasped. Richard's face went purple. Greg's smile finally faltered. "That's enough," Richard said. "Is it?" "Because I don't think it's nearly enough." I stood up, tossing my napkin onto my untouched soup. "You want to know about good faith? Here's some good faith for you." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a check I'd written that morning. I placed it on the table in front of Leah. $120,000, I said. "Consider it handled." Leah stared at the check, her face cycling through confusion, hope, and something that might have been relief. "Owen, thank you. This means..." "It means I'm not the man you remember," I said, echoing the words I'd spoken to her 2 weeks ago. "And you're about to find out exactly what that means." I walked out of the dining room, leaving them staring at the check. Behind me, I heard Greg's voice. What the hell just happened? In my car, I called Margaret Weston. "It's done," I told her. "The money's been transferred to your account." "How long before your accountant has results?" "He's already found irregularities," she said. "Give him another week, and he'll have enough evidence to bury Greg in court." "And the custody case?" "With what we're finding, I'll have full custody and the house within a month. Greg's going to lose everything." I hung up and sat in the Ashfords' circular driveway, looking up at the mansion where my wife was probably trying to explain to her parents and her boyfriend why her husband had just written a check he couldn't possibly afford. Except I could afford it because it wasn't my money. It was the advance from Dad, carefully laundered through Margaret Weston's legal fund, and then redirected to Danny Ashford's tuition account. By the time anyone figured out the paper trail, Greg Weston would be bankrupt, Leah would be implicated in his business dealings, and I would be the generous husband who'd tried to save his marriage by supporting his wife's family. The best part? It was all completely legal. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Package delivered, target acquired, game on. I smiled and started the car. Time for phase 2. The first sign that my plan was working came 3 days later, when Leah called me at Dad's house at 6 in the morning. Owen, something's wrong with the check. I was already awake, sitting on Dad's back porch with coffee and the newspaper, but I made my voice sound groggy. What check? The check you wrote for Danny's tuition. The bank called yesterday. They said there was some kind of problem with the account. What kind of problem? I don't know. They wouldn't tell me anything because my name's not on the account. You need to call them. I'll look into it. Owen, this is important. Danny's enrollment deposit is due today. I said I'll look into it, Leah. A pause. Are you punishing me? Is this because of what happened at dinner? What happened at dinner? You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do. You asked me to pay for your brother's education as a gesture of good faith in our marriage. I wrote the check. What's the problem? The problem is that the money isn't there. Huh. That's strange. I could hear her breathing, sharp and frustrated. Owen, I need you to fix this, today. I'll see what I can do. I hung up and immediately called Margaret Weston. Phase 1 is complete, she said without preamble. The forensic accountant found everything we expected and more. Greg's been running a Ponzi scheme with his development projects, borrowing from new investors to pay off old ones. He's about 2 weeks from complete financial collapse. And the custody filing? Goes to court Monday. With the evidence we have, it's going to be a massacre. What about Leah? Her signature is on several of the marketing contracts that helped Greg defraud investors. She may not have known what she was signing, but legally, she's complicit. Perfect. And my money? Safely in Danny Ashford's tuition account, exactly as you specified. The boy's education is fully funded, just not the way his family expected. Not at all the way they expected. That afternoon, I drove to Leah's office. The advertising agency occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting designed to look creative and cutting edge. I'd been there dozens of times for company parties and client events, back when I was still playing the role of supportive husband. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, who'd always been friendly, looked uncomfortable when she saw me. Hi, Mr. Harper. Are you here to see Leah? If she's available. Let me check. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. She'll be right out. I waited in the lobby, studying the awards and client photos that covered the walls. There was Leah at the agency Christmas party, radiant in red silk. Leah accepting an industry award, her smile brilliant under the stage lights. Leah with various clients, including several photos of her with Greg Weston at what were obviously business dinners. Owen. Leah appeared at my elbow, looking harried. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I'm in the middle of a crisis. Can this wait? What kind of crisis? She glanced around the lobby, then took my arm. Come on. She led me to a small conference room and closed the door. Through the glass walls, I could see her co-workers trying not to stare. Greg's in trouble, she said without preamble. Big trouble. There are investigators looking into his business, and they're asking questions about the agency's work with him. What kind of questions? About the marketing materials we created, about whether we knew his financial projections were false, about whether we helped him mislead investors. I sat down at the conference table. Did you? Of course not. We just did what he asked us to do. We created brochures and presentations based on the information he gave us. Information that turned out to be false. How were we supposed to know that? You weren't. But that might not matter to the investigators. She slumped into a chair across from me. Owen, I'm scared. My boss is talking about bringing in lawyers. There's a rumor that someone might press charges. Against who? Against anyone who was involved with Greg's projects, including me. I reached across the table and took her hand. It'll be okay. Will it? Because right now it feels like everything is falling apart. What about Greg? What does he say? Her face darkened. Greg's not taking my calls. His secretary says he's unavailable, but I think he's just hiding. Maybe he's dealing with his own problems. Maybe. She looked at me with something that might have been the beginning of real fear. Owen, about the check. Did you figure out what happened? I did. And the money went exactly where it was supposed to go. She frowned. I don't understand. Danny's tuition is paid, Leah. All of it. 2 years. In full. But the bank said there was a problem with the account because the money came from a different source than expected. But it's there. Danny can start school. Relief flooded her face. Oh, thank God. When my parents find out, they're going to be very surprised. Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. Owen, what's going on? What do you mean? You're acting strange again. Like you know something I don't. I know lots of things you don't. Such as? I stood up. Such as the fact that Greg Weston is about to lose everything. His business, his house, his custody of his kids, everything. How do you know that? Because I'm the one who's taking it away from him. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the forensic accountant who's been investigating Greg's finances for the past 2 weeks. I'm talking about the evidence of fraud and embezzlement that's going to be presented in court on Monday. I'm talking about the fact that your boyfriend is going to be bankrupt and possibly in prison by the end of the month. She stared at me. You did this? I funded it. With the money you wanted me to give to your brother. But Danny's tuition is paid. I told you I'd handle it, and I did. I just didn't handle it the way you expected. You son of a bitch. Probably. But I'm a son of a bitch who keeps his promises. She was on her feet now, pacing the small room like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? If Greg goes down, he's going to take everyone with him, including me. I'm counting on it. This is insane, Owen. You can't destroy someone's life just because you're angry about our marriage. Watch me. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll expose your whole plan. Go ahead. Tell them how you asked me to pay for your brother's education, and I did exactly that. Tell them how I discovered your affair and decided to help Greg's ex-wife investigate his business practices. Tell them how everything I did was completely legal and above board. She stopped pacing. You planned this whole thing. I planned to give you exactly what you asked for. That's not what I asked for. Isn't it? You asked me to prove I was committed to our marriage by supporting your family. Mission accomplished. By destroying Greg? Greg destroyed himself. I just helped speed up the process. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went white. What is it? It's from my boss. Greg's been arrested. I smiled. Faster than I expected. Margaret's accountant must have found something really good. Margaret? Greg's ex-wife, lovely woman, very motivated. Leah sank back into her chair. You're really going to destroy me over this. I'm not destroying you, Leah. I'm just removing your safety net. Same thing. No, it's not. You made your choices. You chose to cheat on your husband. You chose to get involved with a man who was defrauding investors. You chose to treat our marriage like a business transaction. I'm just making sure you live with the consequences. And what about us? What about our marriage? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She was still beautiful, still sharp, still the woman who could command a room with her presence. But she was also a stranger, someone who'd been willing to trade our marriage for the excitement of an affair with a man who was now sitting in a jail cell. There is no us, Leah. There hasn't been for months. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Leah? You might want to call a lawyer, a good one. I left her sitting in the conference room, staring at her phone and the text that had just shattered her world. Outside, I called Sam. It's done, I told him. Greg's in custody, Leah's implicated, and the money trail leads exactly where we want it to. And phase 3? I looked back at the office building, where my wife was probably having the worst day of her professional life. Phase 3 starts tomorrow. Starts tomorrow. Starts tomorrow. Starts tomorrow. Starts tomorrow. Starts